Most people who are being manipulated have no idea it's happening, and that's exactly how it's designed to work. Some of the most damaging tactics don't look controlling at all. They look like concern, like loyalty, like love. One sign on this list shows up in nearly every toxic relationship, and most people mistake it for a compliment. The one at number 3 catches almost everyone off guard. Number 1, manipulators turn their own decisions into your fault, every time. Think about the last time someone made a choice and then made you feel responsible for the consequences. That's not an accident. It's one of the most common forms of emotional manipulation, and it's surprisingly easy to miss. Here's how it looks in real life. A coworker decides to take on too many projects. When they burn out, they remind you quietly, repeatedly, that it was partly because they were covering for you that one time. You didn't ask them to, but now you feel like you owe them. That's the trap. Manipulators rarely make direct demands. Instead, they build a quiet debt. They do sometimes things you never asked for, and then use those things as leverage later. Psychologists sometimes call this reciprocity exploitation. The idea is that humans naturally feel obligated when someone does something for them. Manipulators know this and deliberately trigger that feeling. The key sign to watch for is a pattern of guilt that always seems to trace back to them. If you regularly feel like you've let someone down, but you can't clearly explain what you actually did wrong, that's worth paying attention to. Healthy relationships have accountability. Number 2, when someone edits your memory of events, trust your instincts. You remember a conversation clearly, but when you bring it up, they tell you that's not what happened. You remember the words. You remember how it felt, but they say you're being too sensitive, or that you misunderstood, or that you always do this. After enough of those moments, you start to doubt yourself. That process has the name gaslighting. It's been widely discussed in psychology, and for good reason. It works by slowly eroding a person's confidence in their own memory and perception. Over time, the target of this behavior starts checking their version of events against the manipulator's version instead of trusting themselves. A common real-world example is a partner who says something hurtful during an argument, and when you bring it up later, insists they never said it. Maybe they say, "You're too emotional to remember things correctly." You start wondering if they're right. They're not. The clearest warning sign is when a pattern develops not just one misremembered moment, but a repeated experience of feeling like your reality is wrong. Healthy disagreements include the possibility that both people remember things differently. What's not healthy is one person consistently telling the other that their feelings and memories are simply incorrect. If you leave conversations more confused about what just happened than when you walked in, pay attention to that. Number 3, the most effective manipulation cuts you off from everyone who could help. This one is subtle. It rarely feels like isolation when it's happening. It feels like preference, like closeness, like someone who just really wants to spend time with you. But slowly, your friendships thin out. Family visits get complicated. And somehow, the only person who consistently shows up or who you feel truly comfortable with is them. Manipulators who use isolation don't usually say, "Stop seeing your friends." That would be too obvious. Instead, they might make plans on the same nights as your existing commitments. They might make comments about certain friends being a bad influence, or bring up small perceived slights from people in your life until those relationships feel less worth the effort. A friend might say, "I just don't trust Sarah after what she said about you." You start pulling back from Sarah. That friend now has more access to you and less competition for your trust. Over time, this creates a situation where the manipulator becomes your primary source of validation, comfort, and information. That's a lot of power to hand one person. Research consistently shows that social support networks protect people's mental health. Removing those networks makes someone more dependent and easier to influence. If you've noticed your world quietly getting smaller around one particular person, that's not a coincidence worth ignoring. Number 4, what you share and trust should never become a weapon used against you. At some point, you trusted them. You opened up about an insecurity, a fear, a painful memory. That's a normal part of building closeness with someone. The problem is what happens next. A manipulator files those disclosures away. Not necessarily with a plan right then, but when a conflict arises or when they want something, those vulnerabilities become tools. It might not be as blunt as "remember what you told me about your dad." It's often more subtle. If you said you're afraid of being abandoned, they start threatening even casually to leave when they don't get what they want. If you mentioned you feel like you're never good enough, they start using that self-doubt as a way to deflect your concerns. You're just being insecure again. That phrase lands differently when someone knows your history. You question yourself instead of questioning them. This is one of the harder signs to spot because it requires looking back at a full pattern of interactions rather than one incident. Think about whether the things you've shared in vulnerable moments ever seem to resurface as criticism. Think about whether your insecurities tend to get used to explain away your legitimate concern. If someone's greatest understanding of you also seems to be their greatest leverage over you, that's a sign worth taking seriously. Number 5, if you can never quite get it right, the goalposts are being moved on purpose. You did exactly what they said they wanted last time, but now that's not enough, or it's the wrong thing, or the expectations have quietly changed, and somehow you're still falling short. This is sometimes called moving the goalposts, and it keeps you in a constant state of trying to earn approval you will never quite reach. It's an exhausting place to live. Here's what it looks like in practice. A manager tells you that if you hit your targets this quarter, you'll be considered for the promotion. You hit the targets, now there are new conditions. Or a partner tells you they just want more quality time. You start clearing your schedule. Now the issue is something else entirely. The pattern never resolves because resolution was never the goal. Keeping you striving, uncertain, and focused on their approval is the goal. Psychologists who study coercive control have identified this kind of unpredictability as a key mechanism. It creates anxiety, keeps a person focused on appeasement, and makes them less likely to challenge the dynamic. The clearest test is this. Think about a relationship where no matter what you do, it's never quite right. Not because you're failing, but because the standard keeps changing. That's not a high bar. That's a moving one, and that difference matters. The hardest part about manipulation is that it's designed to feel normal, even deserved. But if any of these patterns sound familiar, trust that instinct. Have you ever been in a situation where someone kept moving the goalposts on you, at work or in a relationship? Tell me about it in the comments.